Okay, it is time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic is going to be mobile development. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. So there are a couple different kinds of mobile development in today's technology, okay? So let's go ahead and go over those types. So first, we've got the native mobile application, okay? And this is written in the software's, the device's native software, okay? So you know how when you buy your phone, it already has a bunch of software on it, right? Okay, so that software is written in that native language, okay? And so we can write apps in the native language, okay? Or, as you know, we can write regular web apps, which we host online in a web browser, which you're already used to, okay? So there is the other kind of mobile development called hybrid development, okay? So this is where we can run our app in a browser shell that has access to the native platform layer, okay? So as you can see over here, the diagram to the right, it looks very similar to our web app, okay? Except we are deploying it to, these three platforms, okay? So essentially, we're just using the knowledge and skills we already have from, front-end development, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we're wrapping them, in this native wrapper here. And what that does is it allows us to create one code base for multiple platforms. Okay, so why this is important is because for native apps, it's not the same case. So if I was an owner of a company and I wanted an iOS app and an Android app, and I wanted them both to be native, well, then I'd have to go out and I'd have to hire a Java developer and a Swift developer, right? And that's going to cost me lots of money, not to mention I've got double the developers. Whereas with a hybrid app, we simply build one code base and deploy it to multiple platforms. Okay, so it's much more cheaper and cost effective. So this is the kind of development we're going to be learning about today. Okay, so now let's talk about the technology we're going to be using to build our mobile app. So the first one is Cordova. Okay, and Cordova is an open source mobile development framework. Okay, so it allows us to use technologies we're already used to, like CSS, HTML, and JavaScript for cross-platform development. So the official documentation can be found at cordova.apache.org. Okay. Next, we are going to be using Ionic to build out the user interface of our mobile app. Okay, and the Ionic framework docs can be found at ionicframework.com. Okay, so now we know what we're working with. Let's take a second to recognize a specific iOS restriction. Okay, and that is if you want to build a native iOS or cross-platform app for an iOS device, then you have to have a Mac computer so you have access to Xcode. Okay, so this is one of those exclusivity factors that Apple incorporates. So that being said, we're going to be building an Android app today because with Android we can have a Windows, Linux, or iOS, and it won't matter, right? It'll work for all of those. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and let's start off by installing Cordova. Okay, so how you can do this is open your command line and start by running the command npm install -g Cordova. So I already have installed, so I'm not going to hit enter, but if you don't have installed, go ahead and execute that, and it'll take a minute to install it globally on your machine. Okay, once it does, what that's going to do is it's going to give us access to the Cordova command line tool. And with that tool, we can then scaffold together a Cordova app very quickly instead of having to do it one file at a time, which you'll see here in a minute that would take a really long time. Okay, so after you've installed Cordova, let's go ahead and let's change directories onto our desktop. And then let's say Cordova create We'll name it hello world. Then we'll reference .com example hello world. Oh, dot hello world. Hello world. Okay. Perfect. So just give that a minute to run, and it's going to scaffold that together for us, and it should populate on our desktop. There it is. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and let's change directories into hello world. Okay, and let's run this with a server. Okay, so if you don't have any server available to you, you can install HTTP. Okay, so you can say npm install -g http-server. Okay, and that's going to install it globally on your machine. Once that's done, we can then run HTTP -server. Okay, and now we can see it's letting us know local port 8080, it's available. So let's go ahead and go to localhost 8080. Now we can navigate to www. We can see that Cordova is live and is trying to connect to a device. However, we don't have any virtual devices or any kind of emulator set up, so this isn't actually going to ever connect. So let's go ahead and bring in a virtual device that we can actually connect to and simulate this in an Android environment. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's add the Android platform to our Cordova app. Okay, so best understand this, let's first open up the app inside of our text editor. Okay. Then, as we can see, we have platforms. Okay, and we want to add to this platforms folder. And we want to add the Android platform. So how we're going to do this is we're going to say command line Cordova add Cordova platform add Android. Spelled that wrong. There we go. --save. There we go. Okay. So there it is. So as we can see, it's bringing in all the dependencies for the Android environment. So now we just got to give it a minute to load in and execute that. And just a word on mobile development and wait times is they are drastically longer than just standard web development because you're dealing with devices that are much less capacity as far as the power goes. So now we brought in our platform. Let's go ahead and set up our virtual device. Okay, so I'm going to be using Android Studio today to do this. So if you don't have Android Studio, just go to developer.android.com and install the latest version for your operating system. Okay, and when you install that, it should come with the Android Developer SDK. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and let's open up Android Studio. Okay. Perfect. All right. And that's just going to take a minute to spin up. So while that does, let's go ahead and let's build our product for launch. Okay, so I'm going to say Cordova build. Okay. That'll take a few minutes to go through there. And by that time, our Android Studio should be booted up. Okay, let's go back to our Android Studio. Almost there. Still loading up. Big program. Okay, so we can see we're still building. Okay, so we're going to start a new Android project. Okay, I'm just going to name it Coder Camps Mobile. We'll go next. I'm going to choose the latest version of the SDK. Like I said, this should have been installed with your Android Studio. I'm going to leave these empty because I don't need those at the moment. We'll hit next. And I'm just going to choose empty activity for my frame. We'll go next. And I'm just going to leave it the default names. I'm not going to change those. And we will finish. Okay, so it's just going to take a minute to spin that up. And as you can see, our build is still going through here. So we'll let that continue. All sorts of stuff going on right now. Alrighty. And initializing our Android project. So give that a minute to go through. Like I said, lots of wait times, mobile development. That's okay though. Alrighty, so looks like we can see here, we close our tips, there's still a couple processes running down here. So we'll just give it a minute to wrap those up before we start messing with anything. Okay, now let's take a look here. You can see that our build was successful. Okay, so again, this is one of the really nice parts about the Cordova command line tool, right? Because it just scaffolded that together. We just had to add a platform, and now we just built it, and it's ready to launch on a virtual device. Okay, so now what I can do is I can set up my virtual device. Okay, how I'm going to do this is up here you've got this row of icons. Okay, and one of these icons will give you the title, which shows AVD Manager. Okay, and AVD stands for Android Virtual Device. Okay, so let's go ahead and click here. So it pulls up that menu. Excuse me. Okay, so as you can see, I've already created an Android virtual device in the past, but if you don't have one, it's really easy. Just come down here, create virtual device. And then it's going to ask you, you know, what model you want, what brand you want. You know, if you're kind of specific about seeing what it looks like on what. As you can see, I just picked, you know, a generic Nexus device. Just to give me an idea of what, you know, an Android app would look like on it. Okay, so once you created your virtual device, the next step is to, you know, turn it on, and so we can launch our project to it. So how we do this is let's go ahead and click play. And as we can see, it is starting the AVD. So we'll give it a minute to go ahead and boot up. Okay, so we just now have to wait for it to turn on. And it might seem a little odd at first because it's a virtual device, but they try to make it as real as possible. So we actually have to wait for it to turn on. Okay, so as we can see, it's loading up now. So we'll just give it a minute to finish up that process. Okay. Moving right along. I swear, I have a decent computer network. It's just, again, mobile development's slow. All right, excellent. Looks like we're finally moving along here. So there it is, starting menu. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's run this by saying Cordova run, and then we'll target the Android platform. We'll say platform, enter. All right, so now we just gotta wait. It's going to, you know, deploy that, launch it, and we're going to see those results executed here in our virtual device. Uh, the platform. Oh, looks like Cordova Run. Oh, yeah, it should be Cordova Run Android, not Cordova Run platform. All right, let's try that again. Cordova Run Android. Yeah, looks like that was a little more up its alley. Okay, so as you can see, the build was successful, the install, and the launch. Okay, so all those were successful. So now we just have to wait for it to spin up on our device here. All right. Okay, so exciting stuff. Okay, so now we can see that unlike when we first launched it and it just hung there and said trying to connect to the device, but it couldn't connect because there wasn't any device to connect to. Well, now we don't have that issue, right? Because we're connecting to a virtual device. So now Cordova's up and running. We can use Ionic to add a user interface to our app so the user can actually use it. So let's go ahead and let's add Ionic. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down our AVD here. And let's go ahead and head over to our command line. And let's install Ionic. Okay, so we can install it globally just like we did with Cordova by saying npm install ionic-g, or I'm sorry, npm install -g ionic. There we go. Okay, that installs it globally, and then once it's installed, we have access to an Ionic command line tool. So what's really great about this Ionic command line tool is it not only takes care of scaffolding together some basic Ionic logic, but it also takes care of all of our Cordova logic too. Okay, so all that stuff we just had to set up, Ionic's going to set that up and more for us. Okay, so it's going to get our base environment running, and then it's going to provide a user interface for us to actually play around with and learn from. So let's go ahead and let's use the Ionic command line tool to create our first Ionic app. So let's go ahead and say cd desktop Ionic start my first Ionic app. Okay. I just gotta give it a minute. And now it's going to ask us what kind of Ionic app we want to scaffold into. Okay, so it provides a couple different kinds, but the most basic kind is the ones that say tabs. So we're going to go with that. Okay, so I'm just going to hit enter. And as we can see, we have the app right here. And now it's bringing in all the modules and packages, dependencies that it needs to run this app. Okay, so fair warning, this does take, a good couple minutes. It's bringing in everything you need. So, patience is the word here for getting through with a sane head. All right, so we'll give that a minute to execute. More waiting. Fun stuff. Hey, there we go. Some change. So next, it asks what we want to link it. I'm just going to use the default option, hit enter, and now we can change into that. Okay, so I'm going to say CD, my first Ionic app, and then I'm going to open it up to my text editor. Alrighty, so now let's take a look at how Ionic comes into play. Okay, so first thing we need to understand about Ionic is it's written in Angular. Okay, so maybe you're familiar with Angular at this point, maybe you're not, but just know that you will need a basic understanding of Angular to be successful with Ionic. Okay, so this is really great in a lot of ways because Angular is very popular, client-side framework. It tends to be pretty easy to work with, and it makes it easy that we can simply write an Angular app, combined with a little bit, this Ionic logic and deploy it to, a actual, mobile store. So let's go ahead and let's bring in the source code. Okay, so in our source code here, you can see that we have different characteristics about this. Okay, so it looks very similar to a regular Angular setup. Okay, so we've got pages. Okay, those are like our views. Okay, and assets like icons or utilities. This is our main app logic. Okay, so here you might notice we have an index.html file. Okay, something you're probably familiar with. So what I want you to understand as happening is we're using a single page application architecture for this application. So here we have an Ion app element, and we're inserting all of our user interface content for that root component there. Okay, so a lot of other stuff, going on in here, right? But at the end of the day, the only things you need to understand are, how can I edit the user interface and add my own logic to it, okay? So let's go ahead and let's do that. So if we go to pages here, we can see that, they've already got some pages set up. This one looks like it greets us and says, welcome to Ionic, okay? So let's go ahead and change this. And let's change it to an H1. And let's just say, hello world, okay? Next, let's go ahead and save all. And from here, let's run this. And so that way we can see the result of that in a mobile simulator. So save all. Next, let's go ahead and run the command Ionic serve. Enter. Okay. And from here, it's going to deploy it for us. And we can view it in an emulator. Okay. All right. So as you can see, it's a little out of proportion right now. So if we use our simulator tool here, we can see that now we have the hello world just like we wrote inside of our home HTML. Okay, and as we can see, this is the home tab. So when I go to about, it's going to render the about content. And when I go to contact, it's going to render the contact content. So let's go ahead and add some more content. So in the about, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say paragraph tag Coder Camps is the best. Okay, so let's save all. We come back and we go to about. And we can see that it says Coder Camps is the best now. Okay, so not only can we add raw text, we can add buttons and inputs and just everything like you would in your browser, regular browser development. Okay, so again, this is the really monumental part of hybrid apps is you don't have to relearn everything. You literally take a lot of the skills you already have and you apply them to a mobile technology. But again, you don't have to like completely learn something, 100% new. So that being said, let's go ahead and open the floor for anyone who has any questions. So the mic is live. Go for it. Any questions today, folks? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, if that's the case, everyone have a great day. Thanks for stopping by and happy coding out there.